Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome the members and officers and members of the public to this overview and scrutiny meeting, and welcome anyone watching online via North Herts Council YouTube channel. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee clerk, Chanel Wickenden, to explain how proceedings will work and undertake a roll call of those attending online.
Thank you, Chair. Can I confirm the following officers are in attendance and can hear us and we can hear them? Steve Crowley?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm present.
Chris Jeffrey?
Present.
Sarah Kingsley?
Present.
Christine Crofts?
Present.
Rachel Cooper?
Yes, good evening, present.
And Chloe Hitwood. Now, I understand she's joining us later. Are there any other officers in attendance? Thank you. We'll go through the rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of speak will apply. Voting. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone. Details of how members voted will be shown on your screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Item number 1, apologies for absence. We have received one apology for absence today from Councillor Ian Moody. And also, having given due notice, Councillor Lisa Nash will be filling in for the Liberal Democrat vacancy for this meeting. We also missed one officer in the room, which was Jeanette. I just realised. Oh, sorry. Okay, moving on to item number 2, minutes from the 9th of March 2023. So I propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on 9th of March 2023. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Any comments? No. Could I take that to a vote then, please? All those in favour?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3 of the agenda, notification of other business. No other business has been notified. Item number 4, Chair's announcements. In accordance with the Council policy, this meeting has been audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the North Herts District Council website and mod.gov, and a film recording on the North Herts District Council YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on this agenda. For the purpose of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, members may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Item number 5, public participation. We have no public participation at this meeting. Item number 6, urgent and general exception items. I've been notified of one urgent item to be presented to Cabinet on the 27th of June, the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 2. It was not possible to include on the forward plan as notification of funding was given to the Council on the 7th of June 2023, and a decision is required before the next meeting of Cabinet. The formal notice has been published on the Council's website. Item number 7, called in items. No items have been called in. Item 8 on the agenda, members' questions. No questions from members have been received. Item number 9, Overview and Scrutiny Committee resolutions. James.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just quickly run through these. There's not a lot changed. So the task and finish group on community engagement or on engagement is still there. In progress. Following this meeting, I will send an email to the group leaders again requesting nominations for our task and finish group, as we haven't had any nominations. And then we'll look to arrange some dates alongside the comms team following that. The draft sustainability SPD is still in progress, and the previous review has been removed as was requested by the former chair. And the new review is being considered at this meeting. Therefore, that item will be removed from the resolutions after this meeting and replaced depending on the outcome of the vote this evening. I think the only other thing I wanted to say was that last meeting it was requested that the tourism strategy and the town centre recovery items were flagged for further updates under the council delivery plan item, and that is being presented at this meeting as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, James. From my point of view, I think the nominations for, as you've said, we still don't have any. It's been going quite some time. So if anyone is wanting to nominate themselves, please do speak to your party leader, because I do think that's important. Do we have any members' questions or comments at all? No. Okay. In that case, I would like to recommend that the content of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee resolution be noted. Could I have a, I'm happy to propose, but could we have a seconder, please? Thank you. Do we want to debate on this item? Or is everyone happy to go straight to a vote? Okay. If we could all vote then, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, moving on to item number 10, the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee 22-23. Again, James to present, please.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair. So this was presented at the final meeting of the previous civic year 22-23. However, there were some concerns raised with members about the content, specifically around the LGA peer review that took place in 2022, and that wasn't mentioned in the annual report. There was a decision passed to allow changes to be made following comments at the previous meeting and agreed with the chair and vice chair. However, it was requested that the committee review the report before consideration at full council. As an explanation for new members, this report is compiled from information at meetings of the Overview and Scrutiny last year, including statistics of those attending the meeting, referrals made from the Overview and Scrutiny, and viewings of the recordings on YouTube. This version of the report has now been updated with the statistics and the outcomes from the final meeting and is in its final form. We're still awaiting the chair's foreword, and for clarification, this will come from Councillor David Levitt as the former chair for last year. Should members approve this report, then it will be presented to full council meeting on the 13th of July, subject to receiving the chair's foreword in agreement with the new chair, Councillor Compton. Any further comments from members this evening can be added to the report before we present it to full council, should there be anything. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I'm happy to agree with that suggestion that Councillor Levitt put the forward together for that. Thank you. Do members have any comments or questions? Oh, sorry. Do we have a seconder for that? I haven't proposed it yet. Oh, Councillor Matt Barnes, sorry. Learning the technology.
That's okay. So the report says that 23 recommendations are made to Cabinet and 1 to full council. Is there somewhere where we can see what those were? And also, do we know how many were adopted?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
I don't know how many were adopted, but I can. They're all obviously on the ModGov system. So yeah, we can provide the previous from the previous year. I can give you some more detail of that outside of the meeting if that would be helpful.
Thank you, James. So the recommendation that the content of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee resolution be noted. Could I have a proposer, please? I'm happy to propose if no one else is. Thank you, Councillor Levitt. And do we have a seconder? Oh, sorry, Councillor Munster, you wanted to speak.
I'm more than happy to second that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Do we have a debate on this? Shall we go straight to the vote? Okay. All those in favour or not?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Chanel. So moving on to item number 11. Thank you. We're losing my place. Item number of the 11 of the agenda, 3Cs full year update 22-23. Chris Jeffries here for to present this.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So the information note provides an update on the full year performance for 2022-2023 regarding the comments, compliments and complaints for the council and the contractors that provide services on the council's behalf. The briefing note accompanies the 3Cs dashboard at Appendix A and the breakdown of 3Cs by service and type at Appendix B. I will assume councillors have read the report, so I'll just provide a brief overview this evening. So key things to note, compliments and complaints received by the council both decreased in volume, whilst the number of comments received stayed the same as the previous year. The percentage of complaints resolved within 10 days has remained at 77%, which is 3% below the target. However, 6 out of the 12 months were above the 80% target. It is worth noting that the percentage of interactions or collections or visitors resulting in a complaint remains at less than 1%. Planning Control received the highest number of complaints, but it's great to see that this has decreased by 48% compared to the previous year. There were 172 compliments received directly to the council. Some of the wonderful examples are shared within the information note, showing the excellent work officers are doing across the organisation. The LGO received 13 complaints during 2022-2023 across a range of service areas, with 5 of those upheld. 2 of those 5 had already been remedied by the council. And at this stage, I welcome any comments you might have.
Thank you, Chris. We have a request from Councillor Ralph Munster.
Thank you very much for that. And just 2 questions. They're both on section 3.2 in the report, where it says that 5 complaints were upheld by the local government ombudsman. 2 were remedied, 2 out of the 5 were remedied. I was just wondering, what is the result of the 3 complaints that have been upheld by the local government ombudsman, but have not been remedied by the authority? Because there are 3 outstanding. And then just on a second point, so compared to previous years, complaints to the LGO is up. In 2020 to 21, it was 8. It was also 8 in the year after. And I was just wondering, how do previous years compare with respect to upheld complaints to the local government ombudsman?
Thank you for your questions. I'd be more than welcome to share the outcomes of the previous year's LGOs with you. We get shared the reports directly from the LGO. So I'd be happy to send those to you outside of the meeting, if that's okay. And also likewise with the details of the upheld complaints as well.
No, that will be all right. And possibly in the future next year when this report comes, if we maybe could have that information in the report. But thank you very much, and I look forward to receiving that from you.
No problem.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Claire Billing.
I just wanted to ask about the Abassa compliments. They're sort of quite high. They've been higher, I think, in 2021. I just wondered how you collected them.
Abasa log their own 3Cs. So we contact them every quarter to obtain their 3Cs, so I can incorporate them into the report.
Thank you, Chris. Does that answer your question, Claire?
Not really. I just wondered how they were collected. Is it by phone when the BASA are dealing with them? Is it on the internet? I just wasn't sure how they were collected.
I think it depends on how they are contacted. Majority of contact is by phone, and then it's recorded in a centralized spreadsheet that we have access to.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Matt Barnes.
Thanks, Chris. So the statistics are really interesting, thanks. And it's good to see the kind of year-on-year comparison too. Is there any comparison that can be made with other councils? Do you look at that at all? And also, is there any metric for kind of wider customer satisfaction? Because the numbers are obviously incredibly small relative to the number of interactions. I was just wondering if there's anything sort of like a net promoter score or something equivalent to that, because I haven't come across one yet.
We don't have anything set up around customer satisfaction other than the 3Cs, but it's certainly something that I'm interested in setting up in the future. It's on the roadmap. And in terms of comparing with other councils, I regularly meet with the other customer service managers across the district, and we share statistics between the group to see how we're comparing. So I'd be happy to share that with you outside of the meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. And Councillor David Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back on the Abasa again, on the complaints, which has just about doubled this year, doesn't appear to be any breakdown of what areas these were. Were they missed bins? Were they lack of service? We used to get that breakdown of where those particular ones were. I wonder if you could give us a little bit more detail. And was that, was the increase related to any specific area?
There wasn't any particular trend. I'm just looking at the details now, if you bear with me. So it's 105 for the full year. May they received 14 complaints. And that was a mix, really. Bin not taken back to the boundary by the crew behaviour, ongoing missed food, but they were all quite small numbers, as it was 14 in that month. So there's a bit of a spread across the board.
Okay, thanks, Chris. It would be quite interesting to see those stats, if possible, to be circulated to members, because I think it does place a sort of narrative, and similar to what Matt was saying earlier, sorry, Councillor Barnes was saying earlier about things. It would be nice to have a bit more narrative around some of this. I don't think it needs to come back or anything, but if we could see just some statistics, that would be interesting. I also spoke to Chris earlier today, and I asked him a specific question, which was quite niche, and asked if there were any, complaints about Settle or any of our housing providers, which Chris doesn't record for obvious reasons, because it's not a complaint about North Herts or one of our direct service partners. But Chris has said that he'll be able to forward on some information about where we get complaints and forward them on to other parties. So I think collectively that provides far more insight. And I really appreciate you offering to send that all over, Chris.
No problem.
Oh. No, Councillor Bryant has just reminded me that Jeanette was going to speak to another member of staff to check that last one about complaints being forwarded on. So bear with me on that one, but maybe that can come back if possible. Are there any other comments or questions from members? Okay. Thank you. That item was just a note, so thank you very much, Chris. Moving on to item number 12 on the agenda, which is the North Herts Place narrative. Councillor Elizabeth Dennis is here to present.
Yes, lovely. Thank you very much, Chair. So, colleagues, as the report lays out, it's quite simple. The purpose of this report is to provide you with information about the work that's been done in devising a place narrative for North Herts. The recommendation to Cabinet will be that this particular place narrative is approved. Now, I'm sure a number of colleagues might very well ask, why does North Herts need a place narrative? As those of you who recall, our esteemed and long-serving colleague, Councillor Judy Billing, often remarked that there is no such thing, no such place as North Herts. But what the work that we've done in speaking to residents, speaking to businesses, talking to people who work within the district shows is that there are things within this district that do, in fact, tie us all together. And what this place narrative work does essentially is knit together the different lines that we have and the different views and interpretations of this district and of this place, so that we can sell our district as a place to creative cultures, to industry, to people seeking to live, to work, to move and to engage with North Herts in order to drive forward a really vibrant local economy. This is something that's fundamentally different to a council rebrand. We are not talking about North Hertfordshire District Council or North Herts Council. What we are talking about with this piece of work is North Herts the place, and how we sell our place to those that we wish to invest and to collaborate with us. We've been very careful developing the approach and the narrative, therefore, to ensure that we are talking about our people, about our cultures, about our businesses, and about the things that really do make North Hertfordshire one of the most unique places in the county of Hertfordshire, certainly, if not further afield. Our proposal consists quite simply of a strapline, a logo, and a passage of copy, which you have there in your appendixes. The proposed net place narrative has been created based on research findings. We've worked very closely with Haringey. The work has been undertaken at no cost to this council and was funded and supported by the Local Government Association. And the bringing together strapline was chosen because it really does focus on our people and our role in linking people to place. And that links in, obviously, with, from a council perspective, our people first priorities and our vision to create a brighter future for everybody in North Herts working together. It's very positive, and I think, colleagues, when we look at some of the branding and the place narrative that other districts and boroughs across Hertfordshire have, and indeed around the country, it does present us in a much more positive and almost unique kind of way to some of those straplines that you might see, and it has a little bit more meaning to it. We've chosen bold colours, deliberately distancing from traditional political colours and also not repeating the traditional council colours as well, to make clear that this is about place. This is about North Herts the place, not North Herts the local authority. And we really do want to focus on what makes our area unique. So the creativity that we have here, the local artists, the writers, but also our businesses and our residents and green spaces too. The implementation and embedding of the place narrative is going to be key, I think, to things like regenerating our high streets and driving forward our local economies. It provides organisations like the business improvement districts with a tool and with a hook that they can use to push out the value that our town centres have and to really rejuvenate and regenerate a lot of our local economy that has been struggling and has been trying to find its feet and battle back and push back against places like the biotech city in Stevenage or the screen industry in Hertsmere. So it is an enabling piece of work as well, and it empowers our local business districts, the industrial areas within Letchworth as well, to really start to drive forward and to sell the area that they place themselves in. This is about drawing people into the district. It's also about retaining the economy that we have here and providing a reason for people to stay, and how we grow our skills and invest in our people and in ourselves collaboratively. And it will be the responsibility ultimately of our communications team to lead with the embedding of the place narrative. And if you look in the appendix, obviously there's a couple of different options. There's some things that we can do that are going to be at no cost. There's some things that we can do that might be at minimum or medium cost. And there are some things that might cost us more, for example, if we're doing something that's a bit more ambitious, working with the bids or the industrial areas. And those are conversations to be had at the appropriate time, depending on what we feel is the right way forward in terms of our wider economic growth prospects and programs, and also having regard to perhaps any funding pots that national government decides it wishes to sling our way. It's going to be an evolutionary process rather than revolutionary. We are going initially with a soft launch very deliberately because of that. And then we can sort of build and grow into a larger brand. But very much, as I've said, we are not rebranding the council. And this has cost the council nothing to this point in time. What we are doing is enabling and facilitating North Herts the Place to grow and to really tell its own story, just the same way as a number of other local authorities and areas across the country have their own story. If you look at, I think, Cornwall and Devon, they've got some quite brilliant work going on down there. Plymouth also has a great story. And of course, you can look further afield up north to Wigan and look at the great work that's been done with Wigan's deal. So this is the first step in that process of creating a really strong, solid brand for our district, which will attract economic growth, attract people, retain our skills, and we can really push back and show that North Herts isn't just a little blob that's squished between London and Cambridge. It is a place that exists, and it has a wonderful, vibrant, unique culture and people, and some really great places that you can see yourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. For our last members' questions, I actually found this to be really positive, and it's a really positive step. I think everyone in the room hopefully will agree that this is something that, you know, is much needed across the piece. I did have one question though. Was anyone contacted in Royston specifically about this? Because I know, looking at, you know, who was involved, you've got the Letchworth bid, the Hitchin bid. Royston bid wasn't mentioned, and I noticed or the town council, because things on there that I might have expected to see, like the Royston Museum, Thurfield Heath that's right next to Royston, which are huge, you know, draws to people to Royston, are not necessarily listed there. And I thought there's potentially a missed trick, and it was almost as if someone from Royston had been contacted, they might not have got back to you, or maybe they'd been forgotten. And that was the only slight point that I had there. And that's purely because I'm a Royston councillor and I was kind of aware of some things that were missing.
I can answer that question, Chair.
Absolutely fine. Thank you.
Yes, unfortunately, Royston bid haven't been available through the process, but I know they do have a new bid manager. So they are next on my list, if you like, to involve before we start rolling things out. But what we did make sure was that our councillors were involved, and then members from the various sort of creative and arts groups in Royston were involved as well. So they were involved in those original focus groups. And then we've also made sure that we've referenced Thurfield Heath in the actual place narrative copy. But yeah, as I say, Royston bid weren't able to be involved, but on the list to be involved before we start rolling things out.
Okay, thanks, Christine. So I must have missed the Thurfield Heath bid on the copy because I hadn't seen it. But yes, if they could be. And I just had a meeting last night with the Royston Museum. They provided an update to Royston Town Council, and some of the work they're doing there is absolutely fantastic. It's now no longer part of Royston Town Council, so it is completely separate, and it works alongside the caves. And I think it would be really good if they could be involved as well, because some of the history around Royston, Thurfield, goes all the way back to the Stone Age, and there's an awful lot of information and things and activities that they're planning to put on this year. So it'd be fantastic if they could be included as well. So thank you. We've got a question from Councillor Matt Barnes.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to echo that as well as a Royston councillor. I thought Royston seems to have been omitted, but it's good to hear that there's planned to have further engagement there. The other point I was going to raise is that I really support this initiative, and thanks Elizabeth for bringing it to us, and also to the LGA for funding it. I feel like it does a good job of describing the character of the district as it is and as it has been. Given the place shaping and kind of economic growth objectives, I think I would have expected a bit more focus on that, and a kind of stronger focus on climate action and growing the green economy in this district. The proposed narrative seems pretty quiet on that. So I was just wondering if there's any scope or appetite for considering that, to kind of placing a stronger emphasis on those topics.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a valid point. And the great thing of having this place narrative now is that it can also inform the internal policies and strategies that the council comes up with. So we can use this to link through to our climate strategy, which is where a lot of the stuff around biodiversity objectives, what we're doing in terms of tackling our climate objectives and meeting our responsibilities is contained. So I think once now we've got this and we're ready to take it forward, we can start to link those things together, because effectively this is a parent document that you can hang all of those other strategies off of, such as, you know, town centre redevelopment or green space plans, etc., etc. We know what our place is, and therefore we can have a vision for how we can make our place even better.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor David Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. And I know this is something that we've, as a council, we've been trying to get done for a number of years, with but not had the right things happen to make it happen. So I think the main bit of this is the Appendix D on page 60, which is the summary of the place narrative, which actually says quite an awful lot about the district in a fairly small space. It's not too wordy, it's not overly done. It covers all the main things. It just covered Fairfield Heath in there as well. We've mentioned specifically in there. I did see the draft of this, and this is actually quite a nice improvement on the original draft, which had a couple of little bits, like it didn't actually say where North Herts was in the country, and there's a couple of other little bits in there, and it ends on a positive, which is great. So yeah, I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. Councillor Ralph Muncer.
Thank you. And having read the report, I know that there have been focus groups with local district partners, and I welcome that. But could I just ask what engagement has been undertaken with Hertfordshire County Council, for example, the Hertfordshire Growth Board, and the Herts LEP, because I think they could help quite substantially with this. I mean, you see what they've been doing in Stevenage, for example, and there's an awful lot of regeneration going on there, and there seems to be a changing place narrative. So I'd just be interested to see what sort of discussions have been had with those county organisations.
Thank you, Councillor Muncer. Councillor Dennis.
Yes, thank you very much. So the Herts Growth Board has a work stream which focuses on regenerating town centres. Unfortunately, work has been quite slow in that area, and the individual districts and boroughs have taken ownership of their own places to drive that ahead. However, we are still linking in through that work stream and considering the functionality that organisations like Save Our High Streets can provide to enhance things. There was also a query around using the Institute of Place Management to support districts and boroughs coming up with their own place narratives, but effectively working through the Growth Board, you're working as part of a wider partnership network, and it's economies of scale to secure a piece of work like that. It was taking too long to get the buy-in from those organisations. The LGA was able to fund the Hackney piece of work for us, and Hackney have worked with a number of authorities across the country in producing similar documents and place narrative pieces. So we were able to get ahead of what the Growth Board work stream was going to permit us to do, and do this piece of work and get it done now, which will enable us to really get moving with our own high streets work. And again, you know, sort of linking through to the other bodies at county. As you know, as you all know, Councillor Munster, it does take some time, unfortunately. And I think what we've managed to achieve here is to take ownership of our own place while being cognizant of what's happening in other places. And we will absolutely take advantage of the opportunities that those places offer us. But we are now in a very strong position in that we have our place narrative. It is there, it is set. And I do believe that it is more positive and in some respects more meaningful than what some of our colleagues in other districts and boroughs have come up with.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Mason.
Yeah, I'm glad to add to the comment. I think it's a really, really positive report, really worthwhile, and I commend the officers who've worked on it. I'm going to be really, really pedantic now, just to prove I've read it. On the connectivity section, on the train times, I think we need to look at those, because I think 33 minutes from Hitchin to St Pancras does Thameslink no services. I think it's quicker than that. On the other hand, if it's 15 minutes from Royston to Cambridge, I'm impressed. I should do that trip more often. Is it 14? Excellent. But I think we're better than that. Actually, I'm thinking it's no more than 30, if not 28 minutes. That's how pedantic I'm being.
Well, if we are being pedantic, Councillor Barnes, it changes based every 6 months. It is 16 sometimes and 14 others, but no, brilliant. Yes, moving on to Councillor Levitt, because I think that's a very good point. Well done for reading the papers.
Yeah, just to actually come back on what Councillor Munster and Councillor Dent said there. And I said earlier on was that we've tried to do this before, never got anywhere, and part of that reason was we were trying to work with the LEP and that, and it wasn't a very high priority for them, shall we say? So going away from them and doing it on our own is a much better way of doing it, I think. And yeah, the train journeys do vary onto St Pancras one, anything from, as you say, 29 minutes to about 54. Same one.
I'm so glad we're invested in green travel, Council. Councillor Nash, you're next.
Just to rebound that actually in Nebworth, the train service are absolutely diabolical. We've lost all of our fast trains. Yeah, but so I'm glad you've got great trains, but we want to get them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try and move on from trains, hopefully, but Councillor Griffiths.
I just had a question about the timeline that was mentioned. Is there an anticipated timeline of the soft launch or the evolution of the North Herts Place brand?
Councillor Dennis.
If I could refer to Christine, I think she's got a better grip on the exact plot points for the timeline.
Yeah, of course. Definitely by September in terms of our side of launching things. And then I think from then onwards, it will be, like Elizabeth said, very much evolutionary and very much organic. But because we've had these one-on-one meetings with our key partners and we've developed it in tandem with them, we know that they are going to use the branding themselves. And I think as soon as we've got it live and we've obviously shared the assets with them, then everything will start moving really from September, I would say.
Thank you, Christine. We have another speaker, Councillor Munster.
I was just going to ask, are we in the debate stage at the moment? Or are we still at questions?
Still at questions, but
forgive me.
if there are no other questions, so I would like to oh, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, I was trying to check, being pedantic again. In the 4Cs section in the background, the last one finishes with a ... It's like half a sentence. Is that deliberate or is there something missing from that edit? The outstanding beauty of the district's countryside. On page 5 or 47.
Bear with us, let's find
Yeah,
it.
it's just under the countryside section.
Oh, good spot. I would need to check that because that's from the actual Hackney Insight report, but that's a very good spot. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
Hey, Councillor Billing.
Yeah, I just wanted to question the bit about strengths and opportunities and key challenges from the Chief Executive and Senior Leaders section, where it's talking about many people commute to work in London and spend time outside North Herts. I'm not
Sorry,
sure.
Councillor Billing, your microphone's pointing a little bit away and we can't hear you.
Did anyone hear that? Just about the Chief Exec and Senior Leaders section, where it says strengths and opportunities and challenges, saying many commute to work in London and spend time outside North Herts. And I'm thinking that's possibly not as true anymore, at least not on Fridays.
No, I certainly think we've seen quite a lot of information, particularly at Royston, where my patch is about Fridays, and there is certainly an uptake over the last 2-3 years within Royston, particularly on Fridays. Saturdays and Sundays have actually had a lot more footfall as well. I don't think that necessarily stops the assumption and what has been a historic trend, which is that footfall has been falling in towns for some time. But Councillor Dennis, did you have anything to add to that?
Only to say that this is a report back of the perception that leadership and chief execs have had. So given that it's perception, it might not be reality. So it's always worth us keeping a finger on the pulse and just sense checking. But I think when we're thinking about place narrative and telling our story, perception of place can be equally as important as the evidence, because perception influences behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. I have no further requests to speak, so I'd like to move on the recommendation that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommend to Cabinet that the North Herts place narrative be approved. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Mason, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Griffiths, thank you. On to the debate then. Councillor Muntzer, I imagine you got the finger on the pulse.
Oh, indeed. As always, Chair. I'm going to try and be a critical friend here, as was advertised to us during our scrutiny training. But having read the report and the feedback within it, I am inclined to agree with certain aspects of the report, such as the lack of identity within the district, and there being too much focus on the urban core. And I think that's something which everyone actually really needs to take back, including the authority itself. But the issue that we have is that fundamentally North Herts is not a natural district. It is a creation of the Local Government Act. And therefore, within this administrative boundary, we have a variety of different communities with a variety of different unique characteristics and identities within it. And I think we need to make sure that that is actually, overplayed, because we have some fantastic towns, we have some fantastic villages, and we really need to make sure that they're advertised very well indeed. I do, however, think the aims of this place narrative are admirable. We want to see more investment here in North Herts. We want to see more people coming to visit from London and elsewhere. And it seems that it's a win-win. It seems that there's no to little financial risk if we were to adopt this. But we've got to be very, very careful, because as Councillor Dennis highlighted, lots of authorities, lots of districts and places are adopting place narratives. And it's really important it doesn't become too generic. It doesn't become too corporate. It's very important that it's, we retain the fabric of North Hertfordshire and our communities within it. But I do want to just highlight on the place narrative in Appendix D, because and specifically the final, the penultimate paragraph, forgive me, because I think we need to be a bit more positive, to be quite honest with you, because I'm not sure I personally agree with all the challenges of which have been listed there, but I don't think actually the place narrative as it stands supports that positive message that we're trying to promote. I would prefer something like, there are challenges in North Herts as there are everywhere. However, the communities of North Herts, as they have always done, will continue to come together, face these challenges head on and thrive. I think that displays and demonstrates a much more positive message to someone who is reading it, rather than sort of necessarily highlighting in particular the challenges which may or may not be faced by our communities within it. And then I just sort of want for my bit, just to say that I think when you look at Appendix E, the basic option is fantastic, but actually I would be inclined equally to support the mid option as well. And it would also be quite nice to possibly have a little bit of a video, to introduce people to our communities. But that's all I've got to say, and I'd be more than happy to have any feedback on that. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Muntzer. I'm quite happy for anyone sitting on the committee to provide some feedback to that. I think that the majority of them seem sensible. I think there is a mention of a video, for instance, in the packs. I think it's all been thought, or a lot of that has been thought about. But I think, yeah, that is a very important point. Councillor Val Bryan.
I think, coming from what Councillor was talking about from this penultimate paragraph, I think it is the only negative part of the whole document, and at some point we do have to actually admit there are shortcomings, and these are important shortcomings for most people who live in North Hertfordshire. So I'd like that to be left in. So the phrasing might be not quite right, but I do think we need to actually acknowledge that these are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Levitt.
Yeah, well, Councillor Bryant says there, actually, you do need to admit to some of your shortcomings. The phrasing, yes, might be a little bit better. That was originally the final paragraph, that one which ended on a negative. And one of my comments was, don't end on a negative, always end on a positive. And so it's, I think with what it's got, that last one, which is really, and that last little bullet point is really saying quite a lot on its own and really enforces it. So quite happy. The only other thing I'd pick up on there is Garden City Movement should have a capital C in it as well. It's garden.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Levitt. Any other spelling typos, errors, I'm sure can be forwarded on, but no, thank you. Do we have any other debate? In which case, I'll move that to the vote then, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, moving on to item number 13, the LGA peer review report and action plan. Councillor Elizabeth Dennis to present.
Gosh, thank you very much, Chair. I should keep this brief, as I think colleagues have been through it a few times. Certainly, Councillor Levitt is quite familiar with this. So the LGA 2020 peer review looked at this. Council provided us with an action plan, and it was agreed by Cabinet on the 24th of March 2020, and we also looked at it again on the 23rd of June of the same year. A follow-up review was then undertaken by peers at the end of last year, specifically focusing on overview and scrutiny and our finance, audit and risk committees, and that review made a number of further recommendations about how we can continue to improve the functioning of these committees and our scrutiny and audit functions within this council. The recommendations are simply that we note the report and that the action plan at Appendix A is considered and proposed action and be recommended to Cabinet to be approved. I would recommend, obviously, given this does concern scrutiny, that members of scrutiny have particular regard to some of these action points and whether or not you think that they are going to be achievable, if they are right for this committee to be achieving at this point in time, perhaps, you know, if you might like to see things done a little bit differently, etc., or if there are certain things that we need to put a peg in and wait until after 2024 and all-out elections and potential wider changes to the structure and governance framework of this authority. Also, I think the final recommendation is that in the absence of timescales, it's recommended to Cabinet that any timescales that aren't set within this report are created and set in conjunction with the leader, deputy leader and managing director, clearly consulting with the chairs of the relevant committees, because this is a journey that we are all on together. The fundamental function of scrutiny and of audit is to provide that critical friend, that support to the administration, and to ensure that we really are considering the decisions that we are taking as an authority to the best of our ability and delivering the best value for our residents. So I'll happily take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Manser.
Thank you. Just two questions, and it's focusing on the scrutiny officer. So the first question is that I want to ask is a 17-hour part-time officer who is dealing with scrutiny and everything that entails, is that actually going to be supportive of effective scrutiny, or should we possibly be looking for a full-time officer to support the workload? I mean, you know, we've got an awful lot of papers here this evening, and undoubtedly there's going to be more throughout the council. And the second question that I have is, when can we expect that scrutiny officer to be in post? Thank you.
Shall I start?
I will pass that question on to Jeanette, because I know Jeanette is very well versed with when this person might start due to the interview process being undertaken.
Well, we've looked at it in conjunction with group leaders over the last year when we were discussing reorganisation. And yes, obviously, in an ideal world, you might want a full-time officer, but I think it was agreed that someone that worked effectively 2.5 days a week would be something that was certainly better than nothing. And if it was something that we felt wasn't working, I suppose there is a little bit more scope to look at whether we can have that increase in budget to look at some additional hours, but there wasn't any appetite to have a full-time scrutiny officer at the time, and that was cross-party. So for the moment, all I can say is I appreciate that there's a lot of work that hasn't been done, but you will be getting, hopefully, all things being equal, and successfully recruiting a dedicated officer to assist with the process.
Thank you. And I think the second part there is the interviews coming up. So as soon as possible. Councillor Matt Barnes.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, just a question for Councillor Levitt. Do you think it's a fair reflection, the updated report? Have you got any comments on it?
Happy to answer that. Yes, one of my those who were on the overview and scrutiny committee for the last couple of years will know that it was a constant moan of mine that we didn't have the resources, we didn't have a dedicated officer, we weren't able to do our job because of the lack of resources. Some of it was due to difficulties recruiting, some of it was due to staff changeover, and I think yes, it's quite fair because we didn't have the resource, we didn't need it, and I think that's quite highlights it quite effectively in this report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. I mean, from my own personal comments on this, I looked at the comments in depth because obviously I've been on overview and scrutiny for a year and far for the year before that, and I think across the piece it was quite clear to me that councillors across the board weren't necessarily as engaged, particularly looking at forward plans, items coming up, you know, which meant that the officers are very much in charge of thinking about things to put together for scrutiny. And at the end of every meeting, Councillor Levitt, as chair, would say, do you have any, you know, members, do you have anything to bring up? And it was very rare that I think any items came up, and actually generally across the board, not many members over the last 2 years that I've seen do tend to take part in debate at these or put comments. And I think a lot of the comments tend to be very much on the small things, you know, typos, grammar, and that's not pointing out anyone tonight, but that has been a constant thing, rather than looking into the content and thinking, how is this council operating, and is that a good idea, is that a bad idea, how much does this cost us, what is the benefits or the potential from this? So I really, when I was reading, I felt that it was actually a very true reflection on both committees, and actually a failing, I would say, of the committees, and not of any particular committee member, but to really harness the group as a whole to really push forward and actually try and use this to scrutinise the executive members, the officers, but not in a way as you would have seen in your training, in a negative way. Scrutinise them as a compassionate friend and saying, well, how are we going to do that? And I think that is something that I personally feel has been missing across the both committees. So I felt actually all of these recommendations were particularly fair. One recommendation that they've made, which is to shorten the agenda in particular, I think is very important. We have an awful lot to cover. And I think this is why we end up with those comments on typos and comments on small things where there's not enough meat on anything that we're looking at, because an officer has had to compile a 15-page report rather than looking into, you know, particular points. You know, we've got the enterprise delivery plan tonight, and, you know, you've got absolutely everything on there, which means we're not able to look at any particular item individually and say, okay, well, actually, this is really important. It becomes a line on a spreadsheet, which means actually the important stuff does tend to get missed. And then we focus on the small stuff because no one in the right mind is able to comprehend 198 pages of documents with appendices and actually scrutinize that in the week we've got available to actually go through this. So that was just my comment, but I've got a request from Councillor Levitt.
Yeah, if I just might pick up on what you just said there, Chair, actually, the bit about the typos and things like that. One of the suggestions from the report is that we have pre-meetings and discuss stuff before stuff. That's the time to get that type of thing out of the way when you could. I think that the debate we've had tonight has been most we've had in quite a long time, with so many new members on the committee. I think the committee was getting a little bit stale and a bit bogged down, and it needed a change.
Thank you. And Councillor Bryant.
just in just in case you sat there wondering what meeting you're in and why it's so long, there's so many meetings, items on the agenda, we decided to go with this meeting tonight as it is, and then actually progress to a shorter agenda from the next meeting.
Thank you. I probably should have made that clear, shouldn't I? Right. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, so the recommendations are that the content of the CPC report be noted, the draft action plan and Appendix A be considered, and proposed action be recommended to Cabinet for approval, as per Appendix A or as amended, with the relevant overview and scrutiny recommendation timescales. Thirdly, that in the absence of timescales, that it be recommended to Cabinet that these be set by the leader, deputy leader, managing director in consultation with the relevant committee chairs and vice chairs. I'm happy to propose this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bryant.
Happy second.
Thank you. Okay, if we could move on to the debate then. Obviously, we've got three recommendations. First one, obviously, I think we've all noted it, but do we have any comments about timescales or anything up to that point in particular? Councillor Munster.
Thank you. All I would just point out is I think that all of the recommendations are fair, and equally as well, though, I think the responses that we've got from officers on the action plan are also fair. You know, particularly when you focus on the FAR, I don't think the council will be best served at this moment in time to sort of try and split the financial scrutiny from the audit and risk at this stage, and that's obviously something that's going to be going forward in the constitutional review. But no, otherwise it's just really important that we, you know, continue to reflect back on these recommendations and make sure that we are actually following them, because the LGA peer process is really important to make sure that we are following that best practice for local authorities. So thank you very much to those individuals who partook, and thank you to those officers who are going to be implementing those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, thanks. I'd echo that as well. I think all the recommendations make sense. And I'm just curious, I guess, on the second one in particular, what's the process for addressing those and monitoring progress against them? Do we have one? Do we need to put one in place?
Sorry, do you mean Appendix A in the action plan and how we're monitoring against those?
Yeah.
It's a fine question. Councillor Dennis, do you have a strategy for reporting back on that? Or pass it on to Jeanette. Sorry, that might have not been the best phrased question.
So sorry, just qualify that for me. So after it's been to Cabinet, then are you asking whether this would come back to this committee?
Well, Councillor Barnes asked if it would be reported anywhere. I did wonder if it was going back to Cabinet, back to this committee potentially, or anywhere else.
It will go to Cabinet. We had discussions. Ian Cooper, who's obviously the lead officer for FAR, was, and I think has referred to it in the annual report that this has been received, which would go to council. But I think at the moment, I mean, it's a matter for you. You could recommend to Cabinet that this goes forward further than that. But I think at this stage, it would be good to agree the timelines for, if you can't do it today, that obviously those are agreed, first of all, either at Cabinet or under delegations, and then you can decide after that how we're monitoring it. But normally it would go back to the relevant committees to make sure that they're happy that these recommendations are being implemented.
Thank you. One of the sort of concerns I have about recommending timescales is obviously that we don't have the scrutiny officer in at the moment. So from my personal point of view, I think, you know, the second point there, which is in the absence of timescales, recommended to Cabinet to be set by the leader, deputy leader, managing director in consultation with relevant committee chairs, seems fair and proportionate, since we don't actually have the scrutiny officer in post on a personal level. But obviously members here may feel differently and want to push that forward and actually set a time scale against that. So if anyone had any sort of feelings on that one, I'm happy for you to talk. Councillor Munster.
Thank you. And I completely acknowledge and accept the arguments that you put forward. I think possibly it may be useful for members of the committee, and obviously, we'll gauge opinion here, possibly for a 6-monthly, an update in 6 months' time as to the progress of which has been made to implementing these recommendations at the sort of the closest meeting. And then obviously we can take it from there.
I'll have to look at the timescales, but from my point of view, I would like it implemented far sooner. So when I said, obviously, with the absence of a scrutiny officer, I do think it's a priority. Clearly, we've got a year left of this council before there's all-out elections. I think we need to make sure that this is fully complete by then, and also operational, so that we can actually see how it's working and actually peer review ourselves and see what has worked and what hasn't. So as part of that, being in consultation, I was going to push for faster time, or quite fast timescales. So I would suggest sooner than that personally, but that's my feelings. But we've got Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, obviously the report needs to go to cabinet. I kind of accept that, but a lot of the recommendations kind of relate to how the committee operates, I think, and how we're going to change things. So yeah, I would also agree that we should probably be looking at the recommendations of the actions sooner than, well, at some point, and certainly sooner than 6 months.
So Councillor Bryant's just suggested we revisit it next meeting, which I think is sensible. So I'm quite happy with that, and we can feedback from that if everyone's in favour of that one. But we do have Councillor Billing, I think, next.
I was going to say that the progress report could be brought back to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dennis, are you happy to bring a progress report back to the next meeting? Sorry, Councillor Dennis.
Oh, yes.
Are you happy?
Sorry, yes, multitasking. I'm very happy for it to be brought back to the next meeting. I think it's one of those items that everybody has ownership of, so we should be working together and providing support across the piece to each other.
Thank you. So I feel like we have set a timescale for this coming back, which I'm quite happy for that to do. I guess that is a slight amendment. So do we need to take a vote on that? Since Councillor Dennis is happy with that, is that fine, James? Perfect. So I'm happy to propose that we get this back, and Councillor Munster seems happy seconding it. So if we don't have any further comments, if we could go to the vote with the original recommendations as amended.
Chair, that motion has been carried.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, moving on to item number 14, the Quarter 4 update on the Council Action Plan. Rachel Cooper to present.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is the Quarter 4 monitoring report on the Council Delivery Plan, which brings together the projects, risks and performance indicators into one document. The Council Delivery Plan was first brought before this committee in March 2022 and subsequently approved by Cabinet. The report provides a high-level overview of progress made against the Council Plan, but committee members are able to request that specific projects be looked at in more detail, and these requests would then be incorporated into the next monitoring report. So all of the detail behind the projects, risks and performance indicators is available to view in Pentana. This is the Council's performance and risk software, and a guest login is provided on the intranet for any member to use, along with a procedure note on how to view the data. So the Council Delivery Plan is intended to be a live document with changes to milestones recorded and approved by Cabinet. For projects which are to continue through to the 23-24 Council Delivery Plan, new dates have been added to Appendix A for information, and these new milestones have been highlighted in grey for ease of reference. So 8.5 on the report details 4 projects completed in this quarter. And just to give a verbal update, the local government boundary review is listed as requiring a milestone change. However, the report has now been received and all milestones have therefore been completed. So all of these projects will be removed from the future monitoring reports. On page 92, as we complete the project monitoring for 22-23 and move into monitoring of the new council delivery plan, there are some projects which will no longer be reported on in their current form. And 8.6 details the projects which will change on reports going forwards. So 8.9 on the report, at the March meeting, a request was made to provide further detail on town centre recovery and tourism strategy. And this detail has been provided in Appendix B. So on page 96 of the pack, Appendix A, this shows the status key for all the projects, risks and performance indicators. So each project is listed separately with corresponding risks and performance indicators where these have been set. So the grey line shows the status of the project itself. So there's a red, amber and green, and then a percentage completed, which is linked to the milestones. So proposed milestone dates changes have to be signed off by Cabinet. And for Q4, there are proposals to make some changes and also deletions to milestones with the reasons detailed in Appendix A. So these proposed changes have been highlighted in yellow. The orange section identifies the risks which may affect the delivery of the project and the risk status. So a green tick is low risk, amber is medium, and red is high risk status. It also shows the original risk score that's set when it's identified, a current risk score and a target risk score, which it should be moving towards. For Q4, the town centre recovery risk has reduced risk score from a 3 to a 2 following a reassessment of the risk, and 15 risk scores remain unchanged. And 15 projects have already achieved their target risk scores through implementation of mitigating actions. So the blue section on Appendix A identifies if a performance indicator is available, with the green, amber and red status showing whether we are hitting the target or not. So for Q4, they're showing 6 green performance indicators, 2 red and 1 showing as amber. There is a further indicator which is for information only with no target set against it, and explanations for performance are detailed in Appendix A. So that was all I was going to mention on the report, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Matt Barnes.
Hi, yeah, thanks for this. I've actually got some experience of producing similar reports. I appreciate how much effort goes into doing that. There's over 20 reports, over 20 projects live, and as I was saying earlier, it's kind of difficult to provide effective scrutiny on all of them, I suggest. One question I had was, would it be possible next time to have a kind of cover sheet that says for each project kind of what the status is, so you can get a quick idea of that? And also, in terms of the prioritization between the different projects, how does that work, and is there any sort of strategic prioritization being done currently?
So the projects that are identified for inclusion on the council delivery plan are set by leadership team and cabinet, and they're obviously monitored then by overview and scrutiny. So priority on the projects to be included is set at that stage. Obviously, some of the projects you can see where the milestones slip. Sometimes that is due to resourcing issues, and those explanations are provided. And I think that was mentioned at the last meeting that resourcing is a recurring theme. And this is why there is an overarching resourcing risk now that's been set up, which is included at the bottom of Appendix A, along with the cyber risks. But yeah, I think prioritisation is really at directorate level once the projects are underway as to where resources need to be directed in consultation with the executive members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And on to Councillor Munzer.
Thank you very much and good evening, Rachel. I've just got some questions with respect to 3 specific projects. So I'll take it project by project, if that's all right, just so it's easier for everyone to follow. So on page 6 of this report then, the resident public EV charging in car parks. So we've got 2 dates of which are wanting to be delayed. So that's identifying private sector partners to assist in grant application and a decision on the grant application received. Now, it's expected, or it was expected, that this would happen by the 31st of May for both of these points. I was just wondering whether or not you could give us a status update on that, seems as we are nearing the end of June.
I can provide a status update, not at this meeting though, I'm afraid. So the last update I've had from the officer is the detail that's shown in the latest update. I am aware that there are some legal issues that I'm not party to, that they're trying to resolve. And I think that is what has led to the delay in the milestones.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then to page number 8. It may be a similar story here, but it's the Royston Leisure Centre solar thermal. So we've got the milestone of actually procuring and appointing a contractor there. Do you know why this procurement was unsuccessful?
There was an open tender procurement exercise, and there weren't sufficient bids or quality bids received. And I think that the focus on the project now is to determine whether it should be rolled into a new project that's going to be on the council delivery plan for the 23 year. So I think this is why they've commissioned the feasibility report from the consultant and put the new milestones in there. So once they've reviewed the feasibility report, they'll determine whether this project will go forward in its present form or whether it will be rolled into a new project that's already on the council delivery plan for 23-24.
Okay, thank you very much. And then just finally on the projects, looking at page 24, so we're at Churchgate now. I was just wondering, so it seems that the timelines have changed, and I was just conscious of the fact that this authority spends an awful lot of money on consultants, and therefore I was wondering if the capabilities which were needed and the skill set are needed in this instance in order to develop the vision, is that not something which could be found within the enterprise directorate or another aspect of the council? And if that's not the case, then what's the timeline for a consultant to be appointed? And secondly, has this cost for a consultant, has this been forecasted in budgets?
I think I'll defer to Service Director Enterprise if he's in the room, if you'd like to answer that one.
Thank you, Rachel. So in short, we have set a budget for it, and we have also appointed a consultant to assist us. We met with them this week, so we had our sort of inception meeting with them. They are putting together the full detailed project programme, which will then go to the project board, which will be in the middle of July. And from there, we'll be able to provide details back to this committee. And if there's sort of further information that we wish to discuss in part 2, I can do so also later on.
Great stuff. Thank you. I probably will be coming back to you at some point, Steve. And just one final question for you, Rachel. So you mentioned that there is an issue with respect to resourcing. Could I ask you, what steps are you aware of that the council is taking in order to address this issue?
I think generally it's being addressed at leadership team and HR levels. There are lots of initiatives going on at the moment. I'm quite prepared to bring a more detailed update on the resourcing risk back to this committee if you would like to request that, and that will obviously give you a lot more detail on exactly what is happening throughout the council to try to address that.
I think that would be very, very useful. I mean, this is my first overview and scrutiny meeting, but if this is an issue which is, arising on a number of occasions, then I think it's probably best. So thank you very much, Rachel, for those answers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Munzer. Rachel, I'll pick that up with you offline because I think it is something that we've obviously discussed for the last couple of years, but I'm also conscious that we just said we're trying to reduce the length of this meeting, so it might be something that maybe we could get a report offline about rather than coming to the meeting, unless it's you know, it looks like it's something that's worthwhile coming.
Okay.
Right, do we have any other questions? No, lovely, in which case I will move on to the recommendations. That the Overview and Scrutiny Committee comment on the Council Delivery Plan Q4 monitoring report, including the recommendations made to Cabinet. The Cabinet notes the progress against Council projects is set out in the Council Delivery Plan Appendix A, including new milestones, deleted milestones, and changes to milestones, dates, and risks. Secondly, that Cabinet notes the deletion of projects outlined in 8.6 to be replaced by new projects in 23-24. Thirdly, that the Cabinet note the completion of Q4 of the museum and HTH recovery, customer portal, full review of the council tax reduction scheme and grease-based management strategy projects. And fourthly, that the Cabinet notes the reduction in the town centre recovery risk score from a 3 to a risk score of 2. And lastly, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee determine any projects that they want to receive more detail about, which we've just discussed, as part of the next monitoring report. Could I have a proposer for that, please? No? I'm happy to propose. And Councillor Bryant.
I'll have a second.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Right, do we have any debate? Or have those questions suffice for now? Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, the questions suffice, but I'd like to propose to Cabinet that we get a steer on the maybe 4 or 5 top priority strategic projects so that we can focus our scrutiny efforts and more in depth on those where it can make the most difference.
That's a really good idea, Councillor Barnes. One of the...
Sorry. And also that's made explicit in the report that we get.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. One of the things that we spoke about at the Overview and Scrutiny pre-meeting to discuss items such as this, so looking forward, is trying to come up with a realistic strategy of what's going to come up and when. So I will have that conversation and see what we can do around that and try and put a sensible forward plan together for the next meeting, where we not only look at the items that we deem a priority, but also look at the next priorities and try and give a bit of a steer to the committee about where these items are and how much of a priority they are. And then we can track that throughout the year. I think that would be a really good idea. So thank you. Any other comments? No, in which case, could we move to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, on to item number 15, the Shared Waste Services, Corporate Services and Governance Arrangements. Councillor Amy Allen to present.
This report is presented in response to the requirement of the Cabinet report dated 25th October 2022 and the requirement for the Shared Waste Service to outline the governance and corporate support arrangements which will be put in place to support the new waste recycling and street cleansing contract in 2025. These arrangements are designed to support the Council's goal around digital transformation and ensure that residents receive a consistent service across the East and North Hertfordshire. The report does not seek major changes from the existing arrangements, but identifies that it is recommended that each council leads on their own customer service provision, with minor changes to governance and financial management arrangements whereby NHDC will lead on the expenditure management on behalf of both councils. Each council will, however, remain responsible for their own income management facilitated by the shared client team function. Processes and policies will be aligned to support new contract, and therefore minor updates have been made to the service policies which will come into effect in 2025. As agreed by Cabinet in October, the customer service element of waste and street cleansing services will be managed in-house by our corporate customer service team, rather than as part of the waste and street cleansing contract, and the report identifies an indicative timeline for this transition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. So the first thing I would like to say on this particular item is we're not discussing the service specification of the procurement because that has already been to overview scrutiny committee and it's been to full council. So this is very much about the governance arrangements. I just wanted to make that clear. I know Councillor Bryant was quite concerned that you know, we stay on point on this one. So I'd like to do that on this particular case. So do we have any questions, or Councillor Allen, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Sorry. Right, perfect. Thank you. So Councillor Claire Billing.
I just wanted to ask whether East Herts have agreed to this already.
Their own overview and scrutiny is happening pretty much the same time. I think Chloe has just got back from that. She might be able to update.
Hello, everybody. Yes, Chloe Hipwood, Shared Service Manager for Waste. I'm currently sat in the East Herts offices, and I can confirm that the ONS have considered the report and made comment and agreed with the recommendations contained within this report.
Thank you, Chloe. I feel like we have a field reporter in the room at East Herts. Councillor Munster.
Oh, thank you very much. Just turning to 8.20, so on page 129, it's talking about the transition of the services of the council to a new payment system, financial management system, etc. I was just wondering, first of all, could you just confirm when this new contract is going live?
2020, May 2025.
Okay. Could I just ask then, are we confident that the testing and implementation of a new payment system and online integration, that there is enough of a buffer built in within the time frame to ensure that actually, you know, any issues are ironed out completely, to ensure that when, you know, May 2025 does come along, that we are going to be able to, you know, run with clear rails and not any bumps in the road? That was my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. Councillor Allen, would you like me to refer to Chloe?
Refer to Chloe, please.
Thank you. Chloe, are you able to answer that, please?
Yes, so it's a shame actually that Rachel Cooper has left us, because she's essentially overseeing the upgrades and changes to the financial management system. But yes, essentially there is a big project that's got to go on behind the scenes to ensure that we can manage the services. Obviously, we'll also operate with Plan B scenarios. So, for example, the garden waste portal, our essential Plan B is to continue using the direct debits bureau that we currently use, if necessary, if we are not able to implement systems with our own financial management system. But at this stage, we do think we've got enough time. It's just about fully establishing the level of resource needed to ensure that we can deliver a sort of seamless, customer facing element when it comes to sort of online self-serve and things like that.
Thank you. That's really reassuring to hear, because, you know, it is obviously a big change for our residents, and we want to make sure that, as you say, it's as seamless as possible. I have just two more questions. Just looking at governance then on page 131, could we just confirm who would be a member of the Joint Waste Committee, and whether it is going to have any implications to overview and scrutiny of the waste contract? And then sort of the third question is a bit short, but it's just looking at the legal implications on page 132. There don't seem to be any, and I was just wondering if we could have some clarification on that. Thank you.
Would the chair like me to answer?
Yes, please, Chloe. Sorry.
So yeah, just to confirm, we are not proposing a joint waste committee. The proposal is to continue with a partnership board, as is the current arrangement. The sort of main difference essentially to the current partnership board arrangement is that the executive member for finance would be invited to any relevant meetings. So the partnership board isn't a decision-making group as such. It just makes recommendations in a similar way to ONS might make recommendations. And the other question, remind me, apologies.
It was just on the legal implications and there being none.
Yes, apologies. That's just a timings issue with the publishing of the papers. If you bear with me, I can just find the details that have been published with the cabinet paper. If you just give me one moment.
I mean, if it's sort of generally regarding, you know, how a committee works, etc., I'm sure that we can admit that. But if it's sort of something specific to sort of the waste partnership, then I would like to hear it. But
no, I think it's fine. I think whilst Chloe looks for that information, what I'm going to do is move on to Councillor Levitt, and hopefully she can come back with that with an answer for you, because I feel like you're putting on the spot while she's looking for something at the moment.
Thank you. The policies go into quite a lot of detail about different bin types and all that sort of thing, extra bin capacity items prohibited, excess waste. And there's a bit there about the wheeled bins and replacement for damaged ones. But there's nothing at all about the other ones, the blue boxes or the little brown ones, which tend to be the more vulnerable ones. I couldn't see anything in there about those ones. So that was one question. The second question was somewhere in there, and I've lost my page now. There's a bit about bins must be out by 6:30 in the morning, or 6 if the weather's going to be really hot, and that will be notified by social media. Now, not everybody's on social media to see that. We've got the little text alert things, and I know because we get them. But isn't that a change in policy? Because I believe it's 7 o'clock at the moment. I'm not so sure on that one. Just a bit of clarification.
I must admit, I thought it was 7 o'clock myself.
We moved it to 6:30 because it, especially with the hotter weather, it's starting a little bit earlier in the morning. It's most other authorities, their big crews, they start at 6:30. They start the rounds. Starting at 7 when they can start half an hour earlier. Ideally, if it's, you know, if it's going to be from, your bins probably aren't going to be collected as early as 6:30. They just set off from 6:30. Ideally, your bin just needs to be out first thing in the morning. A lot of people tend to put them out the night before because it's just easier. But 6:30 is the start when it's getting hotter, as it is now.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Yes, that is the case. It was ironically, that was brought to my attention about 4 months ago when it came to the last overview and scrutiny committee, because that was mentioned. I've just had a sudden brain thought there. Chloe, were you able to get the information from Ralph, or shall I request that we can send that after the meeting, just for the interest of time?
Yes, so I don't know if James is able to see it, but I've just posted it into chat, but I'll just read the wording. So it says, Cabinet has authority under 5.7.15 to oversee the provision of all the Council's services other than those functions reserved to the Council. Any executive function may be exercised by the leader, executive member with a relevant delegation, or officer. Overall, non-executive functions must be delegated via full council, as demonstrated via section 14 of the Constitution. So it essentially just relates to how the governance will continue to operate under the Constitution.
Thank you, Chloe. Councillor Amy Allen.
Just in response to David's comment about Councillor Levitt's comment about the smaller bins and boxes, the difference is that the larger bins, if they have to be replaced, obviously it's either going to be at the expense of the resident because they want their bin replacing, or it's going to be expense of Urbaser because they've damaged it. With regards to caddies and blue boxes, they are free to the resident. So if you need a new one, you get a new one. And that can be done online. There should be an element of it in the online reporting part, as opposed to bins specifically themselves and bin lids.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, I've a question in relation to policy and the impact on childminders, but I'll follow it up after in the interest of time. I just wanted to note it.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Appreciate it. Right. We don't have any further questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Munster. I'll try to ignore you. There.
Forgive me. In my initial submission, I seem to omit this question, which is quite important, I think, to my residents. So on a page 149, looking at sort of street cleansing policies, it says for in other areas with a very high footfall, it's usually 1 working day. For the majority of other urban areas, it's usually within 3 working days. And then it goes on to the rural areas, and it says it's between 3 and 14 days. I would argue 14 days is quite unacceptable. 7 days, I would argue, is reasonable. Could you just sort of run me through the timings and what was sort of the rationale for that?
So when we say rural areas, we aren't talking about rural villages. And just to make that clear, so, you know, where we're talking about housing, that's not what we're talking about. So we might be talking about a rural lane that requires, you know, a partial road closure or traffic management in order to safely deal with any, say, fly tip or littering issue that occurs there. I would say actually those reports are very, very rare. It's just a sort of balance of reasonableness, and also contractors don't necessarily do things on that last day. They will, of course, try and get them in earlier. It's much more about trying to fit in with existing schedules. So they might be going around every 2 weeks anyway to empty litter bins. And so, of course, rather than send them out the day before to go up and pick up, you know, a couple of bits of litter, they will try and do that obviously when they're already scheduled in the area. It's sort of partly to provide efficiencies for the service, but of course for us as a client, we're also interested in the carbon impacts of you know, sending vehicles out to collect 1 or 2 items of litter, which could, you know, be reasonably collected a couple of days later.
Stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Right, on to the recommendations, because I don't seem to have any further comments at all. So the recommendations are that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee comment on the Council Delivery Plan Q4 monitoring reports, including the recommendations made to Cabinet. First of that being, the Cabinet notes the progress against Council projects is set out in the Council. I'm reading the wrong one. I do apologise. Thanks for telling me, someone. So, right, sorry, the recommendations. We'll try again. To note the draft timeline for the transition for the customer service provision outlined in 8.7. To recommend to Cabinet that each council leads on its own customer service provision with 1 set of processes for customer interactions being developed and agreed with a focus on resolution at the first point of contact. To agree to the proposed updates and changes to the financial management and governance arrangements and subsequent necessary changes to the inter-authority agreement outlined in section 8, and to agree the updated waste service policy statements contained in Appendix 2 to come into force from May 2025. Oh, thanks. Sorry, it's just to note, I do apologise. I'm having a bit of a mare today. It's my first time, can anyone tell? So it's just to note the draft timeline for the transition for the customer service provision outlined in 8.7 and to recommend to the Cabinet the rest of it that I just said. I do apologise. So do we have a proposer for that? Thank you, Councillor Mason, and Councillor Griffiths. Thank you for seconding. Okay, can we move to the vote then, please? Oh, sorry, we've got a debate. Hopefully not too long, but perfect. I don't know why I looked at you, Councillor Munster, but thank you. Right, no other comments coming up, so can we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Okay, moving on to item 16, exclusion of press and public. So I propose under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 that the press and public be excluded from the meetings of the grounds. The following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act as amended. Could I please have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Could we please go to a vote on that? Sorry, we're having a technical issue. It's there now. Thank you.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you for Chanel. There'll be a small wait whilst we can, we've confirmed that we've moved into a private session. James. Okay, everyone, we're back in part 1 of the meeting, and we've moved on to item number 18, which is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. James Lovegrove is here to present.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, just quickly to update on the work programme items. So I think we should get it up in front of me. So the work programme was uploaded as a supplementary document for members and has been compiled from the usual report cycle, as well as discussions with the chair, vice chair and officers who will be presenting. For clarification to new members, the overview and scrutiny work programme is set by the committee, and any member of the committee can request that items be added to the work programme throughout the year. And we will work to bring these to the committee for consideration as soon as practicable. We have a crime and disorder matters item as standard in January, so please could the members begin thinking about what items they may wish to discuss. I appreciate we're in June, but it does come quite quickly, and the more notice I get, the more time I can look to find a suitable provider for information at that meeting. I think as the chair just touched on, following discussions between ourselves and the Service Director of Enterprise, it was decided or sort of suggested that we should remove the standard enterprise update as has just been provided, and will instead be more focused around specific projects throughout the year identified with the chair, vice chair and relevant service director, and then these will be added into the work programme and presented at future meetings of the committee. Alongside the work programme report is obviously the most recent forward plan, and Appendix A is the work programme itself. Chair, I just suddenly thought to add on this one, following the LGA peer review action plan. We did previously have this as a third recommendation, third appendix on this report, that it was added every meeting. So that could be a potential way of monitoring the actions that are being taken on the action plan, that it's added to the work programme for consideration, and we sort of update as when things are complete.
No, I think that's sensible. Thank you, James.
That's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So yes, as it's quite clear, we are looking to reduce the content of or the size of the reports that are coming, so we can focus on things that we can scrutinise more effectively. What I don't want to do is suggest that we remove all scrutiny, or indeed, scrutiny of anything in particular. So if members do have items that they do want to bring to this meeting, please do let us know. You can either say now or send us an email, and we're very happy to look at items being added to the agenda. Councillor Claire Billing.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it was worth looking at issues around staff safety following the attack by one of our contractors. And I'm sure there's probably abusive calls on the telephone and that sort of thing when customers get angry. And I wondered if it was something that was worth looking at.
We do have a safeguarding report coming on the 12th of September, which admittedly I've just seen myself, but
linked.
If maybe we could see if there is if the same team deal with it, then I'd certainly think that's sensible to add it to. If not, actually having something specifically, I think that makes sense to me, because staff safety is of high importance. And Councillor Claire, Val Bryant.
Thank you. Could we also add reviewing the implementation of the new leisure contract?
I think that's a very wise move. So we've obviously got the leisure management contract coming in January 2024, but I think actually looking at the implementation and seeing how it is going is important. Having just seen Stevenage Leisure's old equipment just being turfed out in skips, I'm hoping that we can look at doing something better if and keep sort of make sure everything's working to the point. But Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the draft sustainability SPD in September. So it's a week before it goes to cabinet. I don't know if there's any history on that, but maybe it's been before.
So that one's already on. So it's already one of the resolutions that was passed that the draft sustainability SPD would be brought.
So it's
that's already on the work.
It's within
program.
the resolutions report.
The SPD is part of the local plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Hey, any other comments? No. Okay. In which case, I'll move to the recommendations that the committee prioritises proposed topics for inclusion in the work programme as attached in Appendix A, and where applicable determines the high high-level form and timings for scrutiny input, and that the committee, having considered the most recent iterations of the forward plan as attached to Appendix B, suggests a list of items to be considered. So I think we've had a couple there. I'm happy to propose that. And do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Do we have a debate on that, or are we happy to move to a vote? No. Okay, moving to the vote then, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Chanel. So that brings the meeting to a close at 21:25. The next meeting, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, is scheduled for Tuesday, 12th of September 2023. Thank you for all bearing with me whilst I read for a script for the first time. It wasn't as easy as I thought. So thank you very much for being patient.